What the heck is this? Well, I mean, let's not be too cute or coy. You saw the thumbnail. You know what this is. So let's not waste any time. Let's just dive right into our introduction to Irregular Miniatures War Games in a Box by Ian McKay. It's almost, kind of, sort of, but not really, a one-page rules system. This page, it's double-sided, right? So already we're looking at 2 pages. And if we take a look here at the header here, the Irregular Miniatures Ancient Rule Box. And this really is an ancient rule set. Now, here's a little thumbnail. Ian, I don't think this is our first trip to the Ian K. Rodeo. I want to say that, didn't he write that funky 15 men pirate game that we tried? That was just like not even, I mean, we didn't have the miniatures. No. He did the Marlborough, the Wars of Marlborough game that we played, where you had to start either from left to right or right to left and move each of your units in turn, which meant that you had to really think about, you know, who's moving where, and it was really hard to cross. And anyway, Ian McKay, we're talking about an ancient rule set here, and this page, the game comes as we said, the double-sided page, and then it also includes these funky little cards. These are the actual rules of the game. Well, I mean, kind of. If you consider the army list building to be part of the rules, then this absolutely is part of the rules. So let's go ahead and just talk about how to set up a game. We're not going to play a game today. We're just going to kind of do a brief introduction, not really a review because I haven't played the game. And you can't review a game that you haven't played. You can talk to your blue in the face, but you know, here we like to believe the people that have actually tried it. There's none of this whole, well, I read it and I figured it out. That's not how we do things here. So let's dive right into what it takes to build an army, and I'll show you the couple of armies that I have prepared. I am using 2mm figures, so be aware of that. Now, the way that the Irregular Miniatures Ancient Box rule set works is that you have 2 different kinds of troops, regular and irregular. Your regular troops are, you know, call it your Roman legions, right? Your irregular troops, so they have great staying power. They are professional troops. They don't hit hard straight out of the gate, but they just grind you down. The second kind of troop is going to be your barbarian hordes, your war bands in the Hordes of the Thing vernacular, or perhaps if you're familiar with Dragon Rampant, it would be the difference between heavy troops and, what do they call them? Impetuous, I want to say. At any rate, regular and irregular. So all troops have to be one or the other of those. And the irregular troops hit hard straight out of the gate, but they don't have a whole lot of staying power. Now, you also break down your units into 3 classes. You have, and let's just go ahead and take a look over here. I'm going to be doing, my elves are standing in. You have your main battle troops. That's these guys back here, your big block troops. And they are in stands of 4 to 8. You also have auxiliary troops, and that's these charioteers right here. I am using chariots for my auxiliary troops. Bear in mind that your mounted troops cannot be battle troops. This is an ancient rule set in which the main punching power comes from your professional drilled ground troops. The horses have not been bred to be strong enough or powerful enough to carry great big honking dudes full of armor. We don't have stirrups. So your mounted troops are going to be auxiliaries, or the third class of troop is skirmishers, and that's what you see down here. So as I said, 4 to 8, 2 to 4 for your auxiliaries, and then all of your skirmishers act independently. Now, not entirely. There are some cases where these guys will be able, for example, bow fire, the 4 of these guys can combine factors. Then you also have your general with a bodyguard. Every unit has, and you can have commanders as sub-commanders if you want to do a big troop. So what we're looking at here are my elvish forces consist of 2 battle troops, 2 auxiliaries. These are mounted. I am using light chariots. Now, because this is an ancient set, there are extra special rules for both light chariots and scythed chariots. Your scythed chariots will act as skirmishers. They're not going to line up in big blocks like this and stand around wailing on people. They're going to bang into them. They're going to do a tremendous amount of damage, and then they're going to run away. Likewise, your auxiliary probably, they may be wielding bows or spears, so they'll kind of jump in, make an attack, and then try to jump away. Okay? So you do have, in addition to these kind of preliminary, what would it be, 10 kinds of troops, right? Because you've got regular battle troops, irregular battle troops. You've got your regular and irregular auxiliary, and then you've got your regular and irregular skirmishers, plus these guys, so that's 6, and then you've got mounted for 8, 10 different kinds of battle troops. Everybody needs to have a camp on the field. My elves are going to be using this nice little lovely 4-tenter. And then, of course, as we said, you need at least one commander with his bodyguard. The rules do also include, so we've got 10 different kinds of unit types already, and we haven't even talked about some of the other issues that you might have to account for. And here is kind of a little bit of that. I'm not going to show you all of it, but you do have to worry about, do we have defensive stakes, right? Caltrops. Do we have guys that are going to be able to kind of make improvised battlefield formations? 2 points for dual arm strips. So if you've got a guy with both lance and bow, or bow and sword, that's going to cost you extra points. Armor comes in actually 3 different kinds, I guess you could say. You've got armored, you've got arm and leg armor. So I would consider this in terms of like chainmail terms. It would be like half armor, I guess you could say. But then you've also got, it's going to cost for horse strips will be half armor, and then fully armored, right, is going to be an extra point for that. So kind of call it half and half, and these do have rule effects. We'll look at those in a little bit. And then you've got, like we said, scythe chariots, elephants. How about that, right? It's an ancient battle, so, and elephants have some fun little quirks. So already, I think you can see that this game provides for a great deal of customization. And that's great. Now, we're not going to be able to use all of those things. I don't have any elephant figures, so I'm not going to use those. But that's just for building your forces. I have built 2 forces, and let's take a look at kind of what the Elvish force looks like on paper. And I've had to make a couple little tweaks here, right? So we've got 2 units, the 4 chariots, and then you have classes of troops that we get to that. So what you're looking at here is a grand total of, I want to say, 250 points on each side. It's 250 points for my regular elves. All of these guys, I want to say they're all regular. Let me just double check my roster real quick. Is anybody a regular? No, they are not. On the other hand, we've got the boys in purple over on the other side of the battlefield. These are my undead forces, and they're all going to be irregular troops with the exception of, by the way, you do have artillery figures. And for the battle that I'm going to run, I'm going to do kind of the elves breaking the siege, a timeless classic. The elves have to smash apart these siege engines. They got to bust through and break them up while making sure that their camp stays in one piece. Yeah, so everybody here is irregular with the exception of they do have a unit of armored horse. Where are they? That's these boys right here, armored horse. Those are the only regular troops that we've got. Everybody else is irregular. And of course, we've got fewer skirmishers. We've got 2 units of auxiliary, and oh look, these auxiliary actually have, they're a little bit too big. I've got 5 units in each one. Okay, fine. Auxiliary is only supposed to have. So the bad news for the undead are that they are actually suffering about a 10 to 20 point differential, but they are on the defensive, so they can just kind of hang back. We'll see how that works out in the battle. Now, in addition to what we've already talked about, and then as you can see, we've got some smaller groups of irregular battle troops. We've got 2 units of 7 apiece. Now, in addition to the things we've talked about already, we do have troop quality that you have to worry about. And for troop quality, you do use a different kind of dice. The elves, as regular troops, I've got B-class troops that will be rolling D10s, with the exception of these, the 1 unit of regular all of the skirmishers, I guess I should say. The skirmishers are all C-class, which means they'll be rolling D8. On the side of the undead, we are primarily dealing with C-class troops for all of our auxiliaries. The BT is battle troops, and then our armored horse are regular troops. They are C-class, so they will be rolling D8s. The only exception is our skirmishers are... D8s. Our skirmishers are really good. So what are we talking about here? And they all have bows. So our auxiliary over here have bows, and each of these skirmishers have bows, so they are going to be able to do a little bit of damage before the elves hit them. That's what your troops look like. As I said, that is, we are looking at a pair of about 240, 250 point armies. I have no idea how well balanced they are. I'm not going to worry about it right now. As I said, the one page is for constructing your troop types. Oh, one last thing I should point out, whether they have shields or not, that does matter. Some troops will be using two-handed weapons without shields. They'll be a little more vulnerable, but they'll have a little more punching power. So that's something else you have to worry about. Again, great customization given that you're only looking at one page. Now, let me also just back up a step. I'm not an Ancients guy. Oh, and then here's our, here's the camp for our undead. Not an Ancients guy, so a lot of the jargon that Ian is using here, you know, he talks about how you've got phalangites and peltas and Seloi. I'm calling them battle troops, auxiliaries, and skirmishers because the word Seloi seems to apply to a lot of different kinds of troops over like 10,000 years of warfare. So I'm kind of new at this, and just to warn you, if you're not an Ancients guy, it's going to take you a little bit longer to noodle your way through this, and but if you are an Ancients guy, I think this is a really interesting system that you might want to give a look because it looks like it's going to play pretty fast. But, again, oh yeah, it looks like. We'll see when the rubber meets the road. Now, here's the actual rules of the battle themselves, and they appear on these little 3x5 or 4x6 cards. If only I had a ruler. They are 4.5 by 3.5. Some kind of weird British measurement. This probably actually cuts it based on like, metric system. No, maybe not like 9. It's for those of you that use weird units. It's 9 by 12 centimeters or whatever. But the interesting thing about this is that the way Ian has organized this, you've got the battle rules themselves on one side of the card, and then you've got an example of how to use those on the other side of the card. Hey, well, that's kind of curious because then what happens is you can grab this and look at that. There's your quick reference sheet for the phase of the battle that you're on. And as you can see, you do have to worry about formations. Your skirmishers don't have a formation, but they can shoot 360, right? You've got line troops, you've got a phalanx troops, which only pikes can use, and then you've got a wedge, which has, and then a march column, right? So they probably move faster, right? But the nice thing is you can just set these out and go, okay, well, here's the first part of the turn for... what are we talking about? That shows the turn sequence, right? And then here's part 2, which talks about... zoom in there, little fella. You can do it, Mr. Camera. There we go. Route, pursuit, charge. So this is movement, right? And our movement is for the obligatory moves. Charging and... Oh, you're moving in centimeters. Well, okay, so that's interesting. And he does mention on the backside, you probably want your two armies separated by, like, I want to say 360. So, that's 12 inches, about 18 inches. Now, my battlefield, of course, is about 3 foot by 2 foot. So I think we're going to be fine. And then we get into movement proper, and here you can see, now I'm only going to show you selections of this. So you can see pikemen are really slow in this one. This is all in millimeters, normal 60, 40, right? Your cavalry, and then you do have to worry about whether, right? So you've got in march column, infantry in march column can move a whopping 12 centimeters. What is that? That's about 5 inches. But infantry in, where are we at? Infantry skirmishers can move 10 centimeters. And then, where do we see? Heavy chariots. Regular battle infantry are only going to move 8. So once you put them in march column, they're going to be basically it's 50% bonus, right? So that's a lot of different things to keep track of. But again, you've got built-in cheat sheets for each phase of the game. And what do we got here? Veering, people generally move straight. The one thing I should point out I haven't talked about yet is that the game does assume that you are going to be using orders. Establish the initiative. We'll talk about that when we actually fight the battle. But the other thing is that you do need to establish, you're going to give each of these guys orders. Are you going to advance slowly? Are you going to advance quickly? And so part of your job as a general is understanding how the speeds work and hoping that your troops get to the right place in the right time. So that is basically it. Movement limitations. You can wheel up to 90 degrees. turn around 180 degrees and make a half a move, which I like. It's very simple, right? If you turn up to 90 degrees, you can only move half as far. Oh, okay, that's good. It makes wheeling easy. Now, it doesn't talk about whether you're wheeling on here's our troop. Am I wheeling on the front corner? Am I wheeling around the center? I think you make that up on your own, but I don't know. I think you got to wheel on center. Is probably the best way to do that, because boop, there's your 90, and then you're off to the races. Right, so the next phase is going to be missile fire, and now we get into the meat and potatoes of the game. What you're going to do is add these numbers up, and basically this is where the troop quality comes in. So if you have a troop quality of, let's call it C, you are going to be using your D8. So if your factors all add up to less than your troop quality, you're going to roll that die, and you want to get less than that. And if you get less than that, then you will remove an enemy. So if we're shooting, here's our 4 skirmishers, all right? And they're shooting at, let's call it an auxiliary unit, right? Now these guys, remember these guys, these auxiliaries are, what did I say? The regular, those are regular skirmishers. They're a D8. So I total up, I got 1, 2, 3, 4 guys shooting, and they can combine fire on this unit. They are going to have a total of 4 factors, plus we'll add in a few. They're at short range at 6. Okay, great, 6 factors. I'm going to roll a D8, and if I get 6 or less, then I remove 1. What if I get 10 factors? Then I am automatically, because they're rolling D8s, I'm automatically going to remove 1 stand, and then I'm going to roll a die, and on a 1 or a 2, right? So I got 10 factors. These are 8 of the factors. I got 2 left over. On a 1 or a 2, I'll remove a second stand. Right, I got that backwards. You look at the class of the troop that you are shooting at. So these guys are shooting at a D... These are, what did I say? D8s. Right, so it's because it doesn't matter what these guys... So these guys are D10s, firing at D8s. If I have a total of 10 factors, kablam, I am going to remove 1. I have 2 left over. Now I have to roll it on a 1 or a 2, right? I'm rolling a D10. These guys are going to roll the D8. And on a 1 or a 2, they will lose an extra. That's how it works. Okay, great. We're figuring it out, guys. I appreciate your patience. On the other end, if they fire back at these guys with the exact same D10, these guys are firing in with a 10 factor, right? Because you look at the unit they're firing at, oh, they're only going to remove 1 with no chance. If we had 11 firing here, then these guys would lose a second. They'd lose their 8, and then they'd have to roll on a 1, 2, 3. They'd lose a second. On the other hand, these guys, because they're D10, the first 10 would remove 1, and then they would roll a D10, and they would only lose this on a 1. All right. Now, we went through that in some detail because a very similar process applies once you get into hand-to-hand, all right? So for hand-to-hand fighting, and this is where the difference between regular and irregular comes in, all right? Where is it? Regulars, so it's right here in the center, right? So each of these is your first round, your second round. Come on, lock in for me, would you? There we go. First round, second round, third round, and you can see that, charging, countercharging units, they're going to add, for each base in the unit, you get 1 factor, right? And here's where it gets interesting. For regulars, they don't get any bonus factors on the first round. But on the second round, they'll get a +1 factor, and they'll get +2. So as the endurance factors in, they get stronger. On the other hand, irregulars that are charging with initiative are going to get a big +2. So they're going to hit hard in the first round, and then, oh, look at that. The second round of combat, if they don't win, now you're seeing that difference between the professional troops, right? Lancers charging in wedge formation, again, right? Looking at that wedge formation. If you've got Lancers in this formation, kablam, they're going to hit hard straight out of the gate, but then they get bogged down and they run the risk of getting plastered. Elephants and scythe chariots, holy cats, are going to do phenomenally well. Wow, the whole time? Really? And then you've got the ability for rear support, flanking attack. Oh, if you're attacking in the flank, +4 in that first round. Whoo! But then, the guys on the flank will turn and they'll be able to adjust. So there's kind of how your hand-to-hand work. And it's the same thing, right? So if we've got 4 and 4, and we'll just go through this easy little battle that we've got down here. The combat factors here, now both sides, let's just assume that this is the turn that they have charged, right? And they've charged and countercharged, and they met each other kind of on even footing. Both sides are going to start with a total of, they're going to start with 4, and then these skirmishers are going to add in, they are wearing armor, like body armor, not arm and leg. So that nets them a +1. These guys are also wearing armor. That nets them a +1. So we're now at a total of 5 to 5. The regulars on our first turn get no additional factors. Whereas our irregulars, because they're charging with initiative, we'll give them that, are going to be at 7. So we're at a total of 5 for the elves and 7 on this first round for the undead. The elves are D10 troops, the undead are D8. Now, we don't have enough factors to eliminate one guaranteed. We're going to have to roll some dice. The elves are up against, they're being attacked by a total of 7 factors, so we roll a D10. And on a 1 through 7, we got a 4, one side goes down. These guys are facing 5 factors of attack. They're going to roll a D8, and on a 3, they lose 1. All right, that's the first round of combat. We'll go do the rest of the battlefield. We come back, and now we are going to take a look. It's going to be 3 factors for these guys. And if, again, they're still wearing armor, so we're up to 4, but now nobody is charging. So it's going to be 4 for these guys. But what? Now we got to look at the second round, right? Our regulars are at +1. So our regulars are at 5, and our irregulars are now down to 4. 3 for the troops, plus 1 for the half armor. So now the tide is starting to shift in favor of these elves. The elves are facing a factor of 4, and look, an 8 means they didn't take any damage. These guys now are facing a total of 1, 2, 3, plus the 1 for the armor of 4, but they're rolling on a D8. And look at that, in our second turn, nobody got hurt. So then we look at our third turn, and now things are going to start looking even worse for the elves, because it's going to be that +2 for the undead. Irregulars, the irregulars it's looking bad for the undead, I should say, because they have no additional factors. They are only going to have those 3 factors plus the 4. So on a 1 through 4, oh, look at that, we got the 1. And on a 1, you always have to roll, because on a 1, you always lose a factor. However, the undead are now facing 1, 2, 3, 4 on the D8. And look, with an 8, they managed to avoid it. So the undead are actually doing reasonably well, even with those additional factors. But that kind of gives you an idea how the individual melee are fought. Then we have to talk about panic test, right? And we didn't do that because we wanted to see how the actual hand-to-hand combat went. We've done all of our combat. Now we turn to our panic test procedure. Here's a list of all of the cases where you check panic. Friendly unit is needed for the following. Friendly unit of equal or higher morale routes within, at adjacent within 10 millimeters. What's 10 millimeters? Looks like it's about 4 inches. Okay, so if a friend within 4 inches routes, they're equal or higher morale. Greater strip loss than the enemy in a round of hand-to-hand fighting. That didn't happen here. Cavalry test if enemy elements are camels. Did I mention there's camels in this? Man, they thought of everything. Every base lost when a unit is reduced to half original strength when routing unit tries to rally, when a camp is lost within line of sight. Right, so here we are. We've got a situation where we had 1 loss to no losses. Hey, I lost more than my buddy. All right, so how do you actually test? Well, in this case, the elves are going to have to make a route check because they lost 1 more unit, 1 more stand than the undead. All you're going to do is roll and try to get, if it exceeds the number of strips the unit has lost. These elves have only lost 2 units at this point. So we roll, And on a 1, hey, look, they passed. Now, if they had rolled a 7, they've lost 2 units. A 7 is higher than the number of lost. That means they rout. And what you're going to do is just make a note of that. Anybody that's routing, routes are a compulsory move. We cycle back around to the next turn. The next part of the turn sequence is, the whoever has the initiative is going to do his route moves, his charge moves, and then the force. Let's see, what else we got here? Route, charge, and tests. Then the enemy does all of the required moves, routes, charges, tests, and then the side A will do all of their voluntary moves. Side B does all of their voluntary moves, right? Right. So that's the movement, and then you make another. What is our route test for these guys? We'll just walk through the example. That's where you get to the movement. No, it's the route check here, right? So we pull this up. All right, we're on all infantry are going to route 120 millimeters. All right. So they've routed their 120 millimeters. On the next turn, they can attempt to rally. And turning back to our, where is it? Automatic strip loss. Here we go. This is the, after every base loss, when you reduce to half strength. When routing, surprise, falter. All right, so if you equal the number, so let's suppose these guys had lost 2 units. And if they roll a 2, then or better yet, here we are. We're doing our check. Hey, do you guys rally? You're going to have to roll greater than. Oh, look, we rolled a 2. Oh, my gosh. That's amazing. That's exactly what I was hoping for. Now, I think that only becomes relevant where if these guys had routed in this turn because of a failed check, and these guys rolled equivalent to the number of stands they have lost, they can't do anything. They're faltering, which is an interesting classification. I haven't seen this in other rule sets before, where most rule sets you are either good to go or you're routing. Right? In this case, you got to take a timeout to rally up, and then on your next turn you can set out in pursuit, which is interesting because it does open up the possibility for some interesting situations where units can rout, and then because they have that space where these guys aren't pursuing, it gives them another opportunity to rally on their own. Kind of interesting. Gives you an opportunity for a little bit of back and forth. There's one last thing we want to talk about before we wrap up this how to play and kind of introductory look at the rules for Ian McKay's Irregular Miniatures Ancient Rule Box. Oh, Ian, I keep calling him McKay. It's Ian K, K-A-Y. And that is this random elephant / stone thrower randomization. I rearranged the figures here so we can work this through. I have stone throwers. As I said, I don't have elephants. We'll get to that. This is kind of clever. So what you do is you put your firing, you put the letter A directly underneath your firing piece. And then you roll a d12, and that tells you where your stone is going to land. Now, the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to allow the stone thrower to move that A anywhere on the stand, the stone thrower stand, and then you can rotate it up to 45 degrees. And then the game there, the little mini game, is trying to get as many of these numbers right on top of a figure as possible. So like let's rotate it something like this, and then you roll the d12. Right, and I get a 2, and hey, look at that. The 2 is right here. Kapow! I did 1 stand of damage. Why is this called the elephant, though? And that's where this card gets a little bit interesting, because there are cases where if you are able to spook the enemy's elephants, I think with is it camels maybe? Then your elephants are going to do the same thing, where you put the A on the elephant, and there's a chance they run at the enemy, and there's a chance they turn around and run at the friendlies. And this is kind of showing the direction that they move, right? And so it's a little more useful for the elephants because you're just going to move the elephants to that point, and anybody underneath is going to get trampled. So I think stone throwers, not great. They're not terribly powerful or overpowering. They do only cost what is it, 10 points for each artillery model. And I think this could also be used for things like onagers or I don't know what you call them, the big, is it falcons or scorpions? I think it's scorpions. The Roman bolt throwers. You may be able to do something like this where you say, hey, listen, if anybody is between, it's going to land on, for example, 8. So anybody between A and 8 will be hit, or, that where you're hoping for 1, 3, 5, because it'll travel far and it will hit anybody in the way. But for the stone thrower, I think we're just going to say, listen, if it's on top of it, then you get the hit. And they're going to get, now I've got 3 of those in the army, so they're going to get 3 shots per turn. It's going to make it a little tricky to hit those guys, but that is 30 points worth of troops. So I think that's good for today. We've talked about everything, and of course there are special rules, as I said, for some of these things that we haven't talked about, like horses being spooked by camels that are too nearby. But those are rules that are on our cheat sheet. So, you don't have to remember them. You just need to keep picking up each of these sheets, kind of go through the list, and then you can figure out how the battle is fought. That is E&K's, what do you call it? Irregular Miniatures Ancient Rule Box. And let me close out with one last thing. This game cost, was it $4.40? I want to say it's like $3. It depends on the right. Again, these are British guys. So it depends on the exchange rate at the time. I think I spent about $4.50 on it. Might be a little cheaper now. But it's exactly what it says in the catalog. And Ian does have a number of these. He's got a box set for moderns. He's got a box set for I want to say Napoleonics, black powder. Maybe Franco-Prussian. I'm not sure. Go take a look. I'll put a graphic up. Till next time. I'm praying for you.